back with the final part of our environments. We're going to do the toxicity environment today and a space environment, as if your character was lost in space. Let's pop over to blueprints, into environments. If you wanted your toxicity to rise and fall as if it was oxygen, like this water, then duplicate the water environment. But if you want your toxicity to rise and then you have to do something to remove that toxicity later, then duplicate either hot or cold. I'm going to duplicate the cold environment because I want my player to have to fix that toxicity later on. So let's click on environment cold, duplicate, and we'll call this B environment toxic. Now before we pop into that, let's go over to core, into B_hero, and let's add a variable. That variable will be toxicity. Now let's change that to a float, pile and save. And now when we go over to blueprints and environments and open up our environment, we can talk to that variable. Probably should have duplicated the hot environment because that was already a plus, but that's okay. We're going to get rid of hero reference temperature and the negative, and we're going to drag off hero reference and get toxicity. And then we're going to get a plus sign and add 0.1 to that toxicity. Plug that into the value on the clamp, 0 for minimum, 100 for maximum. And then remove the set here, drag off hero reference and set toxicity. And plug the other end of toxicity into this equals here, and we will go for our max value. Remembering that whatever the top of the clamp is should be the top here. Let's rename our event as well to raise toxicity. Plug raise toxicity into the toxicity setter, and plug the setter into the branch over here. So we'll compile and save that. Let's go over to the post process over in the viewport, and let's make this a sickly green of some sort. I'm just going to go with a default green. So color grading, global, 0 on red, 0 on blue, and that'll do. Now let's go back to our environment. Click on one of these. My snaps are at 500, which is perfect. I'm going to move this over here. Now, just so I know what's going on, I'm going to go over to materials. I'm going to duplicate the yellow material. I'm going to call this green. I'm going to zero out the red and just leave the green there. Hopefully it doesn't clash too much with our grass. It shouldn't, because it's a very bright, yeah, that's a very in-your-face green. And then we'll come back over to blueprints, environments, drag the toxic environment into the world, raise it up, move it over. So now we have our toxic environment. Again, we're going to need something to represent that in our HUD. So let's pop down to user interface, click on HUD_player. I'm going to make a meter just like this. So let's have a look at what we've done there. We've added a horizontal box with 2 text values and mapped one of the text values. I'm just going to put this at a more exact coordinate because I didn't do that in the last one. Because now that I've lined that up in such a way, I can actually mirror that on the other side. So let's call this HB_temperature, so we know what it is. Copy that, back up to the canvas panel, paste that, and we can, instead of temperature, let's call this HB_toxicity. This is really important to name all of your elements here, or as much as you can, just so you have an idea of what's going on, because this HUD will get very complicated otherwise. Changing the anchor to the other side, -50 on the X position, and 50 on the Y, just 1 on the X alignment, because the X alignment is the only thing that's different from this. Now click on the 0 here, and we'll create a binding for that. That binding will be get toxicity, and it's going to look very similar to our other ones. We're just going to get hero get toxicity. And we're going to plug toxicity into the text value, and that's it. Just like our temperature. And one more thing, grab the horizontal box, toxicity, scroll down to visibility, and create a binding for that. That binding is going to be get toxicity viz. Now here I've named temperature value and viz, so let's keep that going. I've forgotten to name this function here, so let's do that as well. So this was oxygen, get oxygen viz. Toxicity will change to toxicity actual and toxicity viz. You can see there's a nice little pattern going on here, and we know what's going on. Let's grab hero, get toxicity, and equals float. If it is equal to 0, dragging off the return, let's get a selector, type in select, plug the boolean into the index. If it is equal to 0, we want it to be hidden. If it's not equal to 0, we want it to be visible. Compile and save that. Over to the test map. Let's go into the toxicity environment and see what happens. I walk in and my toxicity starts raising. The only thing is it's still got that degree Celsius. So we'll have to get rid of that. But we are gaining toxicity. And now that we've hit 100 of our toxicity, we are taking damage. And if we step out, we'll stop taking damage. So that could probably be a bit faster. But again, I'm just showing you how to set this up. You set up how quickly you want the damage threshold to hit and where the damage threshold is in your own game. So back over to our HUD, let's go and change over in the designer, this degree Celsius. Let's change that to a capital G and lowercase y. So that's pretty much ready to go. We're just going to create one more environment, and that environment is going to be a space environment. Back to blueprints, into environments. We're going to duplicate the water environment here and call that space, because we are going to return our oxygen to us at the very least. The space environment is basically going to just affect all the values all at once. So the easiest way to do that is, instead of firing off all of these events like so, kicking that off by start timer by event, we're going to fire them off an event, and you'll see what I mean by that. So let's hold Alt and disconnect these two timers, because we still need to set timers by events. We'll also clear the handle for now, just so we can plug that in later on. We will need that at some point. So we'll just move that up there, and hopefully we don't forget. So move everything down except for begin component overlap and the event begin play. So let's create an event, custom event. That event's going to be drop status. So the first one's going to be drop oxygen. And then we'll create another custom event. This one will be drop temperature, because it's pretty cold in space. And another event, custom event, raise toxicity. And now that we've created those events, we can call them on drop status. Drop temperature, call function, and raise toxicity, because you would be obliterated by the radiation in space. And then that's the event that's going to fire when we enter this status. So the first one's easy. That's just going to be drop oxygen, chilling out right there. And then drop temperature and drop toxicity are going to be the same, carried over from our other ones. So if we actually pop over to the toxic environment, we should be able to copy over everything but the event. The event is tied to its specific blueprint, but all of these should be able to copy over. Copy that over. And normally I wouldn't recommend this, because it's good practice to be doing these lines of code over and over again. However, this video would take forever if I went through it all again. So this is for our toxicity. Let's move our toxicity event up there. And also, I want to keep them in order of how they appear in this event here if I need to troubleshoot. So drop temperature would come from our cold event. Let's go up to our test environment, open up cold, copy this guy over everything. So with those three events there, we're going to plug in our clear and invalidate timer by handle back into our end overlap right here. And then that's going to set off this timer here. I guess we could have left this timer intact, but that's okay. Better to just plug things in again for cleanup. So we're going to raise our oxygen again after we've left that by this timer. Space is pretty unforgiving. So when it comes to our oxygen, we're going to drop that down by 0.5. When it comes to our temperature, we'll do 0.5 again. And our toxicity will be 0.5 as well. The only other thing I would add to this is going to be the same script that we use when we're flying. If we come back over to our test map and go to gadgets and open up our jetpack, you can see here we fired a script to set us to a flying mode. So let's copy that over. I'm going to paste that script down here. And then the opposite. Grab the other set movement mode here for deactivate gadget. So if you wanted to do this from scratch, you would just drag off that hero reference, uncrouch, get a character movement from that hero reference, and set movement mode to flying. And then we would plug that in over here. So let's give that a try. Compile and save. We'll create a material for this as well. Right here, let's right click, duplicate yellow, and we're going to make this material black. And we will zero out all the colors, 0, 0, apply, save, drag out another platform. Put this one on the corner here. I'll probably clean up this area later on off screen. And into blueprints, into environments, grab our space environment and put it down here. It'll snap to the grid so long as you've got the 500 snaps there. Now let's say we wanted to make this area bigger. Let's grab our platform down here. Let's make that 2000 and 2000. Snap it over, grab the environment, center it up with the platform. And because we added that zone size here back in episode 1, we can turn this into a larger environment. And just for the hell of it, we'll make the height the same as well. One very final thing, over to our post process, I'm going to make this one red. 0.1 on red under global offset on the post process. Now I hit play. I run over to the space environment. I'm walking, and then when I jump in there, everything's going crazy. I'm floating in space. And if I stay here long enough, my temperature's dropping dramatically, oxygen's dropping dramatically, and then my health starts to take a hit from all sources, and I'm going to die pretty soon. And then, of course, if I leave the environment, I'll go back to walking, my oxygen will raise, but I'm pretty poisoned and my temperature's dropped as well. So there's the space environment, there's a toxicity environment, there's a heat environment, a cold environment, and a water environment, all ready to go, all completely customizable, up to you, and you can use them in your game. And later on, we will also do some other bits where we can say wear a warm jacket so that we don't get affected by a cold environment, or have some sort of perk which stops us from being affected by a hot environment. We'll have something to help us breathe underwater. We'll have something to help us avoid toxicity. And if we had all three of those things, we could probably survive in space as well. But we'll do that in another episode. We'll probably move on from this topic for a little while, but whatever the next episode is, I hope to see you there.